Well, I told you that Stan didn't tell me how this would end. Right? He manipulated the shit out of me too. But ultimately, I can't imagine him now that I know this whole thing pieced together. I can't imagine him kind of making a story together that didn't end up that way. I'm actually kind of shocked at myself. I didn't see it coming sooner. Really, that's almost like the embarrassment. It's like, really, you didn't see it coming, like not at all. Like you knew all of that other stuff, but you didn't see that coming. Really, like you were that blindsided with all this other shit and all these other things. How wouldn't that make sense? If you can play Mary so well and you're married, you don't think that if you were supposed to be the younger version of Jim, like this Bruce Almighty situation, and you're actually a woman, right, Candace? You're actually a woman, and you're playing this character, you don't think it's gonna end up being that way. If you're supposed to be the same people, what would be the future difference if we don't break that cycle? What would that be? And I fucking couldn't piece that together. Wow. Just proves to you I don't fucking know, right? But that makes sense. Makes way more sense. And Stan says, he didn't tell me shit. That's why the waterboarding didn't work, right? Tying the Lex Luthor thing, right? Like it's useless having all this information without power. So fuck, right now, like I need power. So Lex Luthor needs all the power, right? So it's got to come around, fucking steal it. So I need to collect all the villains. So if you're not on the villain team, I don't want you, right? Like I need the villains to get the power ultimately, right? So I can prove my points. Because without power, knowledge is just literally insanity, right? Just makes you a mental person. And I already did the mental person thing, so I don't want to do that anymore. I'd like to do the power taking down everybody else thing, but don't worry, right? If you've been helping, so the villains, let's get together. The superheroes ultimately have to become the villains. So if you've been just a fucking superhero, you're useless, right? Because we already killed all the superheroes. Well, fuck. What a fucking mess of a situation this is, right? To say the least. Turns out Donald wasn't so fucking far off, right? With the China virus. Seems that I fucking caught it. What ended up happening, though, ultimately, when you catch it, was you have severe delusions that take you completely psycho, right? Like absolutely the furthest end of psycho you can go. I guess I went into, it's almost like an Alice in Wonderland kind of situation where you get sucked into this rabbit hole, and really fuck you, then you come to the trees like the Nightmare Before Christmas, and then you pick which door you want to go down. So it's kind of fucked. So I went down all the doors, had to go through all that shit. It's almost like being in a dream or a coma, but the paranoid delusions are a lot. Like when it fucking takes you, and it did. Fucking took me down this weird path of thinking I was Mary and then Jesus. Ultimately, getting married to Jim Carrey. Him being Jesus, me being Mary then. And then, really, after, like in our marriage, it was stressful, but it was good. And then he died, right? Jim died. And I was at his funeral. He committed suicide because he couldn't be himself. Ultimately made me feel like failure as a wife, I guess. Right? Because if he would have just been honest about who he was, I would have accepted him for all he is, and at least we could have had some sort of a relationship of some kind. And I could have watched him grow into whoever he needs to be. That would be a better reality, I would think. But that's all delusions anyways, because I had the China virus, right? So turns out when I woke up from the coma, right? Woke up from the fucking coma and then realized none of this, that it was all a bunch of bullshit anyways, right? The fucking Hollywood fuckers trying to fuck with me. Now I got a new one trying to fuck with me. This He's fucking Superman trying to seem like he is fucking perfect, right? Mr. Perfect. Um, Turns out though he's got some weird demons. I think he's a witch. They say that men can't be witches. I think that's a fucking lie, right? I think that's a lie too. So ultimately, this has just been a one big dream, right, for everybody and a mind fuck. So it's a question of did you catch China virus or not, and did it make you go mentally ill? And I mean, to the furthest ends of like if you weren't, all the things, especially the dragon and a psycho killer, um, then definitely you probably didn't catch it, and you probably just got some other basic thing like the coronavirus or whatever, which apparently is real. But yeah, apparently there's vaccination that can fix that, so don't stress out too much. China virus though, no vaccination. You got to kind of work through it. In one of my videos, I asked for it, right? Ultimately, I guess I did. Turned it into a game, the Olympics. Well, different version, right? Depending on what Olympics we're playing. So, right, Japan, right? You won the Olympics for that stuff and bringing back that culture. So there you got your prize. China, we had to go through all that shit, right? Because of this Japan and China for that, like the culture and the histories, right? That was fucked, and then that had to circle back around to obviously like the lessons in copy and like be yourself type of thing, right? So we're trying to free everybody, let them be themselves, which ultimately led to, because we've had this war between North Korea and South Korea, so basically we had to clean up all that Asian stuff, right? So that was a lot of fucking work in the game, right? But we did it, so we need some sort of celebration or champagne, so congratulations there. That's ultimately where, right, we had a different prize, India, right? So that's that's an Asian thing, but we had to bring that together, right? Because I had to like ultimate forgiveness. Comedy though, right? Russell, you came around on that, but ultimately where that tied back to Hollywood. Charlie, you're in. So that all tied back around, but Jenny's been fucking working her ass off, right? Because she kicked your ass originally to, so there was a lot of stuff going on here, obviously, which ultimately, because we're doing our own Olympics, right? And then, but then there's the alien, right? The aliens are playing games, the gods are playing games, so it's been a whole big mind fuck for everybody. So yeah, those ones, right? And then Hollywood wanted to know which prizes, and then we had the fucking rehab, and then we've had I just want to be able to actually do my job, right? Like I haven't been able to do my job yet. What's my job? Apparently, I don't know, right? That's the truth. Just lies, right? Just lies on top of lies, right? Professional bullshitter, also known as an entrepreneur, trying to make this fucking business work. So, circle back around to I submitted my ad and then it wasn't acceptable apparently, right? So I'm gonna have to do a new one. So I'm sure ad right, because when I'm dealing with ad outreach at this particular time, I'm acting in the bipolar, right? So it's the ones that have figured it out, right? All right, Chris, we're doing that thing on that side, but then we're also doing that we have to do it the real way, like Candace, organically. So there's superhero Candace, right, up in the space clouds, right? She's operating with you guys doing fucking whatever over there. And then there's also this other world where Candace has to just follow the steps like everybody else, which is very hard for her, right? Because she's got all this other shit going on, right? So she's trying to fucking manage that and focus, but also get this going. So, but ultimately, I believe in them, and the that's why I signed up, right? So follow the steps and then have a freedom from the income side to not stress about that, so I can be a little bit more myself. And then the company will grow, and it'll grow with a team ultimately, and it'll go in different directions as it needs to go in different directions, because like Grandpa says too, it's like it's the investment. And right now I'm investing in myself, and I'm investing in the company, and back into the company, because I believe that that's going to take on a life of its own. But it also had to start from one soul and one purpose that also ultimately has to always tie back to those principles, right? So you keep that at the core values of what a company is. But there's so many different elements to it, right? There's so many different parts to it. So I just, to make it easier, so we'll say it's a professional storytellers club. and all types of content are welcome to create and make this the biggest thing on the planet, right? We said originally, remember when I said I kind of went psycho when I figured it out, that, and I made a list of names and people and said, okay, here, and all these people, and we have to work together to, do this project. Well, ultimately, we did on that side. So in the other world, right, that's done that way. So I'm like, okay, that is concluded. So now Candace has to be Candace and try to not to be bipolar, but it's still there, right? In the superpower world, right? Because I ultimately have a new kind of thing where now I'm circling back around to being Lex Luthor, right? Because somebody else is trying to say that they're more in charge, and I'm like, hold on here now. Are we gonna have a different type of fight? Because it's kind of different, but it's also fun. Ultimately, though, because why? Because I'm stubborn and don't want to admit to submission, even though I might be enjoying it. But I'm not fucking admitting too much. That's I'm not admitting too much. Why? Because then I'm just going to be a mental case, right? Then you put me back into the mental case category of the things I see, and maybe I don't want that, right? So I'm not, now I learned my lesson. So that's another thing, right? In the game, you learn your lesson. You're like, well, fuck, I kind of fucking said before, right, that I, all these things in this whole psycho world with Jim in the game and making up a husband. Well, I don't want to fucking go through that again and be a psycho, make one up, but like a real one in real life if I was going to do that. Not, whatever, but so instead of being the superhero, I'll take the role of the villain. Pass it over, Zuckerberg, right? Like, you already killed his Lex Luthor. I'll be Lex Luthor now. Superman might not be as bad of a guy as I thought if he's understanding, the mental illness and then taking me back after all the cheating. I guess maybe he's not so bad. He was like, oh, maybe I was wrong too. That was an unconventional scientist because I typed in Krypton, right? And I just thought that was a made up thing for these superhero things, right? Like, I didn't actually know that it was like a thing in science. KR, like on the elements chart or whatever. I never fucking memorized that. I told you I was doing unconventional science. I don't know that shit. Right? So now I'm like, oh. You have to be kind of dumb, I guess. His birth animal year, because I'm born in 1983, is a pig, right? So that's probably why I got put on the capitalist pig team, because it's kind of clear that I need to be greedy and get some money, because I can't do anything without money. So can we get to the point where the business actually makes some fucking money, please? Because I'm going fucking nuts. It's the only thing I need to work so that I can move on with, like, doing the next shit, right? Like, I'm obsessed with that, right? Because I need to be greedy, ultimately. But, I had to figure out my worth, right? We were starting out at this stupid amounts, and then I kept saying, no, we need more, right? So, ultimately, this has come down to greed. And, like, I am Chinese, right? Like, that was a real thing. Just in a different timeline, apparently. So that's fucked, right? So that's where that gets all fucking sideways. Told you I was a Chinese businessman, but now I have to be a Chinese businesswoman, right? Because that's a different fucking thing, right? It's a totally different fucking thing, right? So they're the ones telling me, we didn't fucking ninja train you for nothing, bitch, right? Like, are you gonna make some fucking money and make some changes? Because you're useless to us right now. So I got the fucking Asian women at me, right? They're at me because they're kind of abusive, right? They're secret abusive. That's the thing, right? They manipulate you in a whole different way. Don't fucking let them fool you, right? I told you I was married to a fucking Asian, right? That's why, right? She fucking had no hesitation in cutting her husband's throat. She's like, see ya, bitch, right? Like, you're out of here, right? So, new club, right? That's why ultimately they're telling me that I cannot, say too much as we move forward with these next parts of the plan, right? As the money needs to come. That, ultimately too, right? Like, I have to start a fight, right? So I have to start my next fight because I lost the other fight. So I have to start another fight. So I have to find another little schoolgirl crush to play this game with, right? So you have to find a person that, you can ultimately fight with, right? And pick on. Otherwise, then the whole thing's fucked, right? But it apparently needs to be somebody closer to my age. They were making it out that they're trying to get over the daddy fetish thing. It's a bit disturbing. So I guess to heal other people, that makes sense. So, like, you have to be with, play with people your own age, right? And I don't know how to do that. So that's where that's a whole other thing. But turns out I'm on the, yeah, that ties back around. So I guess I'm back to being born in 1983.